Do you talk to your members before the service or only afterwards, or never?
I try to talk to them as often as I can. I love getting to people before the service, although my primary target before service is people who I haven't seen in a little while or people who are new. The timing here is interesting because I have Bible study from 9 until 9:45, and then church begins at 10. You probably similar probably to your time limit, your constraints as a dual parish pastor. But I've got to get my microphone on and get vested, and then scope out the sanctuary right before church. I do a lot of talking afterwards and before Bible study. Yeah.
Yeah, so my early service, my only time to socialize with them is before the service because I gotta get out of Dodge to the next church, and then my time to socialize with them is after the service. So you can, if you're at the first church, talk to me beforehand, and if you're at the second church, talk to me after.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how much how much can get done on a Sunday morning. Short conversations that need to, touch and base. It's really it's it's always kind of feels to me like a high intensity. I'm always gassed by the end of uh, church on Sunday morning because I feel like I've talked so much.
Sometimes I feel that way. Sometimes I'm like, let's go. I could get a million more things
Mm,
done.
okay, well, you're made of something different than me, so
My hair follicles attest to that. So, listener
yep.
question that is related to this: what is the proper behavior in the sanctuary prior to a worship service? Personally, I like to use the time for prayer, reflection, and preparation for what is to come. The upcoming hour is special, and I want to get the most out of it. This might be because this is written by a Norwegian pietist. So, not to reveal the identity of the questioner. Many people seem to treat this time as a social hour to catch up with their friends. While this is not a major distraction to me, it does just seem inappropriate. Am I old? Am I too old-fashioned? Great question, and this. Uh, I know this is argued about all the time. What's your take?
um, yeah, I'm trying. So let me just give you these impressions that I have because I'm not settled on it. I'm not sure. Um, for one thing, very often people are especially here, let's say, because we've got a time crunch beforehand. There's Bible study, and then it's just like, and also the architecture of a space matters a lot too. I will say, so we don't have at Grace a kind of a common area outside the sanctuary that's good for socializing. There's no like gathering place outside the sanctuary. So if people are going to talk to each other, they're going to find each other in the sanctuary to have those conversations. Um, if I walk into the sanctuary and people are chit chatting and there's like conversation happening, it is always striking to me as a really joyous sound. People are here and they're happy to see each other, and that. So my first reaction to that is always very positive. But also my perspective is different because I'm working and I'm not like trying to. I'm trying to find people, and I'm not trying to get myself shifted to a prayerful, meditative kind of a frame of mind. Maybe I should. I try to sit down when the prelude begins, and that's like 3 or 4 minutes before the bell rings, and mark the time that way. Um, okay, so that's like my first impression. But then I would say, like, obviously, there are some things that are just inappropriate in the sanctuary, like cr- crude joking, raucous behavior. But as like volume increases, people have to talk louder in order to hear each other, and so there's just like this ebb and flow naturally. I don't know. What I don't think that like silent. I think that silence is actually kind of off-putting in the sanctuary before church. You know what I mean?
So, what if it's just some prelude music and people are prayerfully contemplating?
Yeah, I think that that's a little bit different. If there's prelude happening and people are prayerfully contemplating, that's different. The prelude kind of cues the conversation to stop. But if it's like you come into the sanctuary and you're not allowed to, don't talk to me. That's a little bit tricky.
Sure. Yeah, I think I want to strike a balance with it too, because I want to be a like a warm, welcoming congregation. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I also want to be serious about like meditation on God's word.
Right. Right. So, there is like everybody does need attention shifting to take place, right? And so a question would be like, how much time do you need, and what's the space for that? Obviously, in the sanctuary, like you're shifting gears. One of the metrics for me is always like, how do people behave during the service,
Mm.
right? You know, are people paying attention, or are they chit chatting or whatever? It's like generally, generally people are not misbehaving during the service, right? So they have an understanding that this space and this time is unique.
Do you want to put out a PSA that pastors can see everything that happens from the pulpit?
No, I do not. Do you have people who nod off during your preaching? Your preaching is pretty
Um,
pretty bombastic. So
well, 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 the danger with that is you just get numb to it after a while.
it's true.
So I don't know. And you talked about this being in the Midwest, that sometimes you can't always tell what people are thinking. And then they come out and they're like, they can tell you point by point exactly everything you said. So sometimes it is hard
Mhm.
to tell what's going in.
Yeah, right, right. But then
I,
again, like I think about myself when I'm listening to a sermon. Um, I don't like to look the guy in the eye or make facial responses to him. In fact, I like don't like looking at the preacher while he's preaching. So I probably look like I'm sleeping or distracted. So
no, see, I talked about cows yesterday for and I had one cow farmer in the congregation. And so I looked directly at him when I said cows.
good. Did he say cow farmer? Who calls it that?
Well,
Cow farmer.
I didn't call it a cow farmer. I was talking about
Hmm.
"Are You My Mother?" You know that classic
Oh
story.
yes, I did. I listened to your sermon. That was great. That's a really great illustration. Yeah.
I thought so too. I was like, this is this is so great because it's so comical, but it's also really depressing.
I hate that book for that reason. It really bums me out. That
And then
book
it did.
and yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
what
go
book?
ahead.
No,
Well,
well,
the
yeah.
giving tree, that one really bums me out too.
Oh man, what a heartthrobber. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And then it ends with the old man sitting on the stump, right?
Hmm.
You're
Yeah.
gonna make me cry this morning.
we did, we,
Oh,
did we talk about children's books last time? Harold and the Purple Crayon? We did, didn't we? Yeah, that's right.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
classic,
Go on.
great,
Go on.
great book. Oh, I was gonna say I did get some some visceral responses when I said what are you smoking in the sermon yesterday. So that was good. That was the intended effect.
Yeah. Um, I was just thinking. So circle back to the question, the listener's question. Um, what was the way it was framed was, what's appropriate behavior in the sanctuary prior to the service? Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Do you do you think that there is, I mean, do you think it's unfair to say that this is a subjective thing, in two ways? One is, what does your own personal piety um, kind of require of you? But also, what is the culture of the place that you're in? Do you think that makes it too subjective?
No, I think that's fair because people behave differently across time and space, which is true. Like my family gathering is going to look very different, maybe even than your family gathering, but certainly you go to a different country, it's going to
Right.
look way differently.
Right. And then, I mean, even like the notion of reverence can differ from one setting to another. So things that are like taking off a hat, in indoors, right? In some places, it's completely whatever, makes no difference. Or I had this conversation once, about wearing a tie, for a generation, for at least one, for an older generation, not wearing a tie when you're operating in an official capacity in church, like say being an usher or something like that. Not wearing a tie would be offensive. Whereas for another generation, that doesn't even know what a tie is, right?
Right? Are you trying to bring back ties?
I do like a good tie. I don't. I have had a ton of ties that I've given to my sons, so I'm ready to refill my rack in my closet, looking for some new ties.
Oh, I see. Can I suggest Macy's clearance rack, because ties are ridiculously expensive for the MSRP. I mean, come on, $65 for for this piece of fabric,
Yeah,
but $10. Now we're talking.
I've never had an awesome paisley tie, so I think that might be my next one. Paisley's pretty sweet.
I like paisley. Do you have a certain color palette you're going for?
I'm guess. I'm I'm incredibly bland when it comes to
Uh,
colors.
well, it's the blue, red, purple.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
hue.
I
Okay.
see, the thing is, I'm lacking in confidence when it comes to colors, and so I always default to the completely neutral colors.
You know who doesn't lack in confidence in colors?
Nope.
Bruce Timm and his chasubles.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he was wearing his rose yesterday. Do you have rose paraments?
No, I'm not manly
Okay.
enough. I was supposed to borrow his purple chasuble yesterday because he didn't need it because he was wearing his pink one, but I forgot to pick it up.
I gotcha.
Yeah. Hey, related question to the sanctuary thing. I've heard before people argue that you shouldn't have congregational meetings in the sanctuary because what if something explosive happens there, and then every time they come to the sanctuary, they think about that
Oh,
fight. That argument always kind of struck me as a little bit weird because isn't the sanctuary the place like where you're supposed to like deal with things?
yeah. That's an interesting. Never would have thought of that rationale. And you're right. My intuition is the opposite. But if you want people to be um, behaving in a dignified way, the sanctuary is a place that would require that. And if they misbehave, sanctuary makes it all the clearer that there's a correction needed. There's a reproach needed, right?
And then that would be the good, right, and salutary use of the sharing of the peace before the sacrament.
Yeah.
Because
Um, Go ahead.
what often happens is every time I've ever seen that happen in a congregation is it's just social hour, like it's a brief 2-3 minutes before the service of the sacrament to catch up. But if you actually knew there was a conflict in the sanctuary, like it would be entirely appropriate to say, guys, we had a big fight, we've come to terms with it, and now we need to publicly recognize it. And I think that would be a really beautiful time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine that there is a hurdle, there's this barrier to things like that actually taking place, and what it requires is like one precipitating event and faithful people or people who've been humbled, um, and once you do something like that, once it happens once, then you're kind of off to the races, and I think about the level of maturity that's required there, and how great that would be if that was what was cultivated, so that the things that characterize a congregation are not like undercurrents or hidden conflicts, but the resolved conflicts. Like those are the things that characterize us. You know what I mean?
It's good. So you're saying we should only read the resolves at district conventions?
That's You're great at word association.
It's my biggest talent, that and typing really fast.
So when you were talking about business meetings in the sanctuary, I was thinking about decorum generally and like delimiting its space. So I have in my mind what feels like kind of arbitrary rule, and that is that the only thing that should take place in the chancel behind the communion rail is worship, or whatever is needed to like set up for worship, right? Or if I need to run up there to grab the cross in order to show the kids something, that's different. But like other things should not take place in the chancel. Um, and it seems to me that we need those kinds of demarcations. I can't say this is, strictly speaking, like a unique space intrinsically, but I can say we do well to set it apart as a unique space for our own sake and for the sake of anybody who's watching. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I think making the connection between our churches and the tabernacle and the temple is wholly appropriate,
Sure.
with some obvious differences. But
Yeah.
yeah, that seems natural to me. Now, help me tease this out, and maybe you got to think about this. So, whenever we plant a church overseas, the first thing we do is we find the Seventh Day Adventist congregation so that we can rent their space on Sunday mornings.
Mm.
It's just a strategic thing to do, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it makes sense. And I like, okay, that seems really shrewd. But let's say a church is planting, let's say a Seventh Day Adventist church is planting, and they wanna rent our sanctuary on Saturday. Why is my inclination to tell them no?
This is great because here's the parallel for me. I don't mind inviting people of all stripes and sorts to events that are going on here at church. Like, come to a retreat, come to a worship service, no problem, absolutely. But I'm not going to go to yours, and I'm not going to advise my people to go to yours. Um, and it's like it's because there's a difference, right?
And what you're saying is like I have the right confession, right? That's
Isn't
what
that
makes a
right?
difference.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the case. And so you're saying I don't want the Seventh Day Adventists to worship in this space, not because like I have something against them personally, obviously, but because we can um, set apart this space for true worship, and there's something about their worship that is um, heterodox, and so it shouldn't happen in our space, right?
Now there seems to be, and maybe this is because like this is just how I thought about things. But if a different group wants to rent like your fellowship hall during the week, that seems like a different question. Obviously, depending on the nature of the group, but like this is one thing that always has differentiated the Missouri Synod from the Wells. We were like, hey, Boy Scouts, fine, whatever, you can use our building during the week.
Can you distinguish then between the kinds of things where we would have natural alarm and where we maybe don't have alarm but probably should? So I'm thinking, for instance, it obviously seems obvious to me that if like a gay couple wanted to have their wedding reception in your fellowship hall, but like we just needed the space, right? Um, you would say no. But what about uh, a non-Christian couple getting married? Um, would you rent out the space to them because they need, a fellowship space for their reception afterwards? How do we distinguish these things? Like, how do we make that clear?
Yeah, that's a good question. It would seem weird to me if a non-Christian man and woman couple wanted to rent the fellowship space at a church.
Let's just hypothetically, you've got a great fellowship space.
Oh,
It's like
okay. Yeah,
people see
gotcha.
it and they're like, this is the best room in the town for receptions.
So, they wanted to get married at a venue and then rent your fellowship space for. Yeah, I think I would be inclined to say no.
Okay. So who would you rent to then?
Okay, so here's a good instance. We have a non-denominational church in town that doesn't have a building, and they just use our space on Thursday night for Bible study, and it's just the fellowship hall.
Okay. Okay. Um, huh, Interesting. I'm trying.
But then
It's really like it feels to me like there are all kinds of lines that are unclear that they are going in lots of different dimensions, and it's really hard for me to sort out, honestly. Like, which makes me want to just say nope, nobody nobody gets to use the space. You know,
and that's a really easy line to take, but it also comes across a little bit cold, which you don't have a
it
problem with
does.
that. So good for you. Like we have no problem. Like the Boy Scouts have used our basement for their derby car space, which seems great because then the added benefit is when I get bored during the week, I can go down and row my own derby car. Um, but then if like the Freemasons came and asked, can we use your space? It's like absolutely not.
So is the difference that the Freemasons are like explicitly anti-Christian in their orientation and the Boy Scouts are not? What's the
Yeah.
distinction?
Well, yeah, that's a good. Well, and things have changed with the Boy Scouts in the last 5 years.
I don't, yeah, I haven't tracked that, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's a shifting. We have one ethic that stays the same, but organizations obviously always change. So you have to constantly evaluate, just like with recognized service organizations in the Missouri Synod.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Hmm. Interesting. It's the solution to the cold, or the problem of coldness for me is always like to say to people, look, I got nothing against you. I could say yes to you, but if I say yes to you, then I have to say yes to all kinds of other things, and so it's just like precedent is bad, and so that often is like, you know, I would love to find a way to say yes, but it's it's hard. It's hard too, right?
Sure. Hey, somebody help us come up with a. Do you have to come up with a policy document? That's the safest way of doing it. It just seems like I just want to say at the pastors and the elders and the church council and like their discretion.
That's I think that's fair. Policies are important legally, right? But I think that they're also the problem is that you lose trust really fast if it appears that you make decisions arbitrarily, right? And if the rationale is not explicit, then the suspicion is always arbitrariness. And so that's why maybe if you don't have a policy, you do have to give a rationale. Maybe you
Sure.
don't. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's just kind of like, nope, I just get to decide, and and I don't have to. I don't actually have to tell you why.
Oh, so try this one out. Hey, can I rent your space? I will answer your question if you answer me this question.
There you go.
John's baptism.
And say shibboleth.
That's good. Hey, are we going to talk about all of Matthew 1? Because this is nuts.
I was thinking about how there's lots going on here. Yeah. So we could just see what happens here. We've spent a lot of time talking about genealogies already. So the topic of genealogy has been covered.
Yeah. But this genealogy is like home run after home run after home run.
Yeah. Matthew knew what he was up to.
He did. Now, should we give a brief introduction to the Gospel of Matthew?
Yeah. Josh, are you a proponent of Matthean priority?
Yes, with the caveat that I don't know, but to me, it just makes the most sense that the Gospels were written in the order that they're presented.
Fair enough.
And we'll see these interdialogues, which I think just make the most sense. So I think the synoptics obviously have a special relationship, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but I also think it's 2 by 2 because Matthew and Mark clearly have a clear relationship, and then Luke and John, interestingly enough, also play off of each other. There's a lot of similarities that I think John is playing off of Luke. So, for instance, miraculous catch in Luke 5. Well, John 21 also has a miraculous catch, with the detail being the nets didn't break in John 21. Or Luke has the parable of the Good Samaritan. Well, in John 8, they accuse Jesus of having a demon, being a Samaritan. And he says, well, I don't have a demon. So it's kind of a wink there. And there's a ton of little connections between Luke and John. So I think it really is a 2 by 2 kind of Noah's Ark kind of thing.
Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, and Luke and John.
Yep. That's good too. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. That's fair. I like the notion of receiving the tradition of the church as having some significance and not just not just haphazard.
With the caveat, it's like I don't have to be dogmatic about it, but we've talked about this at length. Like the arguments for Markan priority are just bad and sinful.
So we would. I don't know I don't think about these things and haven't for a long time. But it would be curious then to kind of figure out how Mark understands his task in relation to Matthew. Then, like what's he doing that's distinct?
Yeah, right. That's good. And you obviously can't throw out the doctrine of inspiration. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Right. Huh. Okay. So what else do you want to say about Matthew in general?
Well, once we get to the Sermon on the Mount, one of the big outline things about Matthew is that it's organized in 5 distinct big blocks of teaching from Jesus. So we call this the 5 discourses. And if you want to go zoom out, really big outline, you see it here in verse 1. Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So roughly, if you're going to outline this as a 1-2 thing, the first section of the book describes Jesus as the son of David. So that would be Solomon, and this would be a king. And so you're going to have all of these parables. The kingdom of heaven is like. Okay, well, if he's Solomon, that makes sense. He's describing a kingdom. And then the shift happens in Matthew 21, Palm Sunday, and that's the son of Abraham. So that's Isaac. And this is the shift because Solomon is the son of David who rides as a donkey, and then it gets handed off to Isaac, who was the son who was sacrificed on a mountain.
Okay. I've never thought of that before. That's good. Son of David, son of Abraham. Yep. And Matthew clearly has in mind this reference back to the books of Moses, right? The Genesis leading into the fivefold revealing of God's law, which is what Jesus is accomplishing across his 5 discourses, right?
Right, and so it's notable in the Greek. It's the Biblos of the Genesis, right? The Bible of the Genesis of Jesus Christ. Now, let me here. I got these on my shelf. And if anybody's listening, because I think On the Line will have just come out yesterday when this airs. I actually brought this up with Brian. So this is the commentary series that I actually talked to Brian about. This is Peter Leitzhart's Jesus as Israel, and I haven't read this in a couple of years, but I'll send you the outline because his argument actually is that Matthew is a recapitulation of the entire Old Testament, and he's got it charted out, and it's pretty convincing. Now there are at times it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's fascinating.
Well, what's fun about that look at things is that like the stretches are kind of like, well, there's a puzzle here that is yet to be resolved, but the main tenets are so obvious, right? Are so concrete that it's not that it's not there. It's just we haven't figured it out yet what the connection is.
Right? Yeah, exactly. This is why reading the Bible is exciting because there's always something new to discover.
Yeah, right. Like this, I just have to share this reminiscence. I was teaching on Jeroboam yesterday, and you know Jeroboam's fall is dreadful, and he of course builds the 2 golden calves, moves the festivals to the 8th month. It says anybody can be a priest, and we're going to worship in Shechem instead of in Jerusalem. This perversion of worship. But the kicker for me is that he names his sons Nadab and Abihu. And so it's kind of what is going on there? He's thinking to himself, Aaron was really kind of mishandled way back when in Exodus, 32. Poor Aaron. He really had it right. Those poor sons of his in Numbers 11 or whatever it is. Leviticus 11. Yeah. Anyways, there's more to uncover there. What is going on with Jeroboam? What a wreck.
I always wondered that in the New Testament, why did Saul's parents name him Saul? It's like, okay, tribe of Benjamin. It's like, you guys knew how this turned out. But then, of course, it's like, well, it had to be Saul because he totally redeems the first Saul. I mean, namesake-wise.
Yeah, and I wonder how much revisionary history was employed. Like this happens. This is characteristic of the conspiratorial world that we live in right now. That like, yeah, this is what you've been told, but here's the actual truth, right? And I could imagine that being the case, especially if there's tribal loyalty, right? So, and that's in fact what people who follow Jeroboam say about Jerusalem and about Rehoboam. They say, what lot do we have with David, right? So imagine that you are of the tribe of Benjamin, and you're like, yeah, and the throne that rightly belonged to us, the favored younger son of Jacob was given to Judah. We don't buy it. Yeah, I can imagine that kind of talk.
Oh, that's good, because John 8. We are sons of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anybody. It's like,
yes.
What are you guys smoking?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It was our plan all along.
Okay, have we talked about this at length? Because the structure here. So obviously you have Genesis in verse 1, and so where's a lot of genealogies in the book of Genesis, which we just read. Now here's the pattern that Matthew was following, and I think the first one is it Genesis 6, or is it, no, it's 5. Okay, so Genesis 5:1. This is the book of the generations of Adam, which sounds exactly like Matthew 1:1, just the names change, right? Now, here's the question you have to answer then. So this is the book of the generations of Adam. Is this going to describe Adam's ancestors or his descendants?
You would expect it to describe his descendants.
Well, it has to describe his descendants, right? because
Right.
he's the son of God, which tells us Luke 3, right? So, okay, same thing in Genesis 10. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So, same question. Are these going to describe the ancestors or the descendants? Well, it's going to describe the descendants. So, whenever we have this formula, it says the book of the genealogy of generations of this name, it's going to describe his descendants. Okay, so question. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Is this Jesus' ancestors or his descendants?
Yes. How about that? That's good.
So we obviously know this is his ancestors historically speaking. But what Matthew was saying is, actually, Jesus Christ is the source of all of this.
And I mean, this comes up when Jesus puts a point on it, right? And he says, how then can David say, the Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand, right? How can both these things be true?
Exactly. And you see it right here in verse 1, because he's the son of David, but he's also the source of David.
Right.
Yeah. So first name in the genealogy is Jesus. What's the last name in the genealogy? Verse 16.
Yeah, Jesus, who is called the Christ. Yeah.
Okay, so it begins with Jesus, it ends with Jesus. Another way of saying this is he is the Alpha and the Omega.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. And you get this comprehensiveness about the whole thing too, right? So these ages of the world, and now there's like eternity is on the other end of them, right?
Yeah, that's so. You by the way, where does that phrase explicitly show up? I am the Alpha and the Omega. What book?
Revelation, right?
Yeah, which is what book of the Bible?
Thank you. The last book of the Bible.
Okay, so the Alpha and the Omega of the New Testament both say that Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega.
Nice. Somebody knew what they were up to. Yeah.
So somebody did know. And actually, Revelation ends this way. So Revelation 22:16, Jesus says, "I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star." Now, I like to make those rhyme. I like to say, I am the root and the shoot of David. So that's how the Old New Testament ends, but it's also how it begins. I mean, this must be divine. It is genius.
Yeah. Okay. What else comes out of the structure of the genealogy for you?
Well, Matthew obviously points it out as the 14. And I was...
Is it, so do you think that so I've always thought, 3 14s, but 6 7s, which kind of leads into a
what did you say?
Need for a Sabbath. No, I did not. I did not.
You said it. You said it on the podcast. David Buchs said 6 7.
Leads into the need for a seventh 7, right? We need a Sabbath rest. We need another set, right?
That's good.
But or is it that we need another 14 because we need actually 8? We actually need 8 7s.
So that's a debate that happens in the Feast of Booths. Is how many days is it? Is it 7 days or is it 8 days? There's clearly an 8-day period, but it's confusing as to what is the great last day of the feast that Jesus is at in John 7. Is it the 7th day or the 8th day? And I kind of like the ambiguity there, because it throws in some tension behind the tapestry, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. I mean, it's the now and not yet. tension of that tapestry, right?
Oh,
Because in fact, it's like there now remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. Okay, and we enjoy that rest in Christ, but the new day, we like in the same way, we also enjoy the new day of the new creation by faith. We're not there yet, but also at the same time we are, right? We're somewhere both in the seventh day and in the eighth day.
do you believe in time travel?
I do, yes.
Okay, good.
Where would you go if you
Oh,
could get in
where
a
would
machine?
oh, that's a good question. Ooh, how many dates do I get? Like, what's the charge on the machine?
You can go to one date and then you're stuck.
Oh man, do I have the option of staying right here, right now?
No.
Okay, because that's what I would do, because if I go back in time, I can't make this podcast with you, and I
Okay,
also
there you go. Let's say you're just gonna go visit. Okay, you're gonna go visit and you're gonna come back. One day to
oh,
go visit.
okay, thank you, because I was starting to sweat. I was like, man, I'm not like I actually throw myself into hypothetical situations, unlike
Yeah,
you, where
you're
you
a
just
method
coldly
actor.
analyze it. Yes, just like Tobias Funke, and so I trying to think of what's the most enticing scene in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure when they and it's when they go it's when they go and see Socrates and go so crates.
Okay.
But I think that I would probably go to the American Revolution. I think it would be fun to see the 1770s. What
Fun.
about you? What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah. Uh. Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I'm very curious about the actual personalities of people that we have um, thought a lot about historically. So, so I think I'd like to know what Moses was at, like what the meekest guy that ever lived. I'd like to observe him at that moment when he's striking the rock. I'd like to see.
Okay. The second time?
Yeah, the second time. Yeah,
Okay.
which he later. I mean, I love it in Deuteronomy because later he's like, the Lord wouldn't let me go into the promised land because you all provoked me to strike the rock. I mean, he and Aaron are such brothers, you know? They made it the same stuff. I love it.
I I think it's true though.
Yeah, he's just like gonna point it out.
I've had enough. It was actually a blessing that he didn't have to go into the promised land.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, so the Bible says that, right? He receives an even better inheritance for the eternal heavenly promised land, but he also didn't have to deal with the bickering of the Israelites anymore.
Yeah, I mean that's the disappointment. Joshua really bears a heavy load, right? And he knows it's coming too, because he's like, um, all of you be obedient, and they're like, yeah, we'll be obedient. And he's like, no, you're not. You're not going to be obedient. Why are you lying to me?
Oh, good. Okay, 14. Um, Going back to Genesis, since Matthew brings it up, the book of the Genesis of Jesus Christ. 14 plays prominently in the dreams of Joseph and Pharaoh.
Not of Joseph, just
Yeah,
of Pharaoh, right?
okay, so 12 sons plus Jacob and Rachel,
Hmm. Okay, there you go.
right? Because
Well, yeah. Okay, yeah.
that would be, I think that would be 14. I mean, just some
The
rough
sun
math
and the moon
there.
and the stars bowing down to me. Okay, yeah, good.
Right. And then Pharaoh's dreams, you got the um two dreams. You got the skinny cows eating the fat cows and the skinny stalks eating the fat ones. So that's 7 times 2, and then it happens twice. And God says he gave the dream twice because it was confirmed. It was really, really going to happen. No going back on it. And so part of what's going on here is when you get numbers repeating is God's confirming that this is his plan set in stone. And the great thing here is it doesn't just get repeated twice, it gets repeated 3 times.
It reminds me of how it's reiterated in Daniel that the decrees of the kings of the Medes and the Persians cannot be revoked. And they have this kind of mystical understanding of this. Darius is up all night trying to find a way to not throw Daniel to the lion's den, but then he has to, right? Just like he must, because it can't be revoked. And it's comic because, of course, it's like Herod's oath. Just don't do it, or Saul's oath that when it's going to kill John. Just like admit you were wrong and just don't do it. But contrast that with the Lord, who is not like a man that he should regret what he has sworn to do, but who, when he issues a decree, it is good and it will never change. It's so firmly established, right? That's a big Hebrew theme, is the establishment of something that cannot be shaken.
So what do you make of the times when it says that God regretted making man, or that he repents? That's in the book of Exodus, right? Like he changes his mind about destroying the Israelites.
Yeah, I mean, this comes into focus in 1 Samuel because it on the one hand, in the same chapter, God says, "I regret that I have made Saul king," and then in the same chapter, he later says, "I'm not like a man that I should have regret."
Okay.
So the distinction, I think, is this: that we regret things that we wish we had not done. That is to say, we realize later we should have done them differently. God does not experience that kind of regret, but he does experience sorrow over the things that people do, and that are consequence of the choice of what God's will is, right? So God appoints Saul king, and he does not go back and say, I should not have done it that way because it was according to his will. But he does say, this breaks my heart that this is what you did with what I gave to you, right? That kind of regret. I think that's the only way to preserve God's immutability, right? I think that's the only way to do it.
Yeah,
but that chapter in 1 Samuel is striking because he uses the word in both directions. So
sure, that's good. Same thing with God doesn't tempt anybody, which is the same word it's the same word as test, but there's clearly two different dimensions to it.
Right. So maybe I've said this before, but this is my explanation there, is that God tests. He tests or tempts wanting you to succeed. The devil tests or tempts wanting you to fail.
Yep. It's really helpful, because one's obvious deception, while the other is like, I'm giving you the answer key.
Right. And that's essential when you encounter the test, especially when it feels like this is a test that you're set up to fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Canaanite woman. It sure doesn't look like you want me to succeed. Seems like you're trying really hard to get me to fail.
Hey, speaking of women, we gotta talk about all these women in the genealogy. So we're saying they're not necessary for the genealogy, because Jewish genealogies are male driven. That changes in the 2nd century AD, right? Isn't it after the Bar Kokhba rebellion that the Jewish genealogies changed to be matriarchal? But so many people remember that and they go, aren't Jewish genealogies matriarchal? Well, now they are, and they have been for the last, 1900 years, but not biblically speaking. And the only reason why a genealogy becomes matriarchal is when you don't know who the father is.
Okay. Interesting.
So that means that your culture, your line is getting raped and plundered. And so you don't know who the dad is, but you do know who the mom is. So this is actually a really important question, because the Jews are always asking today, what does it mean to be a Jew? And I think the answer is like, it has to be on your mother's side, and you have to be at least half Jewish on that side, right? Like your mother has to be considered a Jew. And then it's legally important because that gives you the right to move to Israel. Now, that doesn't really have anything to do with us. It's just the modern day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't know any of those things, so that's helpful. So it is aberrant, really. I mean, it stands out to us, but it really stands out even more vividly than we realize. Tamar is mentioned, and Rahab, and I guess Ruth is not mentioned, but she's implied.
She is.
Ruth,
She's in verse 5.
Tamar, right. Rahab, I missed her on the line there, and Ruth. Yeah.
And then in verse 6 is the wife of Uriah. It's so,
Right.
I mean, so Matthew is really salting an open wound because all of these women have scandals that are associated with him. And I will say that actually all of these women their scandalous situations, they actually prove to be the righteous ones in all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Tamar, that's the first one in verse 3. We talked about that story at length. That was with Luke Otten, wasn't it?
Is that right? Oh, that was a long time ago. Yes, I think you're right.
So we did talk about that one, but she's actually the righteous one. It's Judah who was unrighteous and not wanting to give her another son. But
Do
it's a
you
yeah.
do you think there's significance here to the fact that both of her sons are named Perez and Zerah? Like we don't get that even with Isaac, the father of Jacob and Esau, Jacob, the father of Judah, right? I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that's because it's pointing out the scandalous nature of it. That
Mm, okay.
Tamar's his daughter-in-law, but also his baby mama.
Hmm. Okay.
So these kids would have been Judah's grandchildren and his children, right?
Yes.
So do you ever read these stories about like 23andMe or these genealogical websites that completely shatter people's families because they find out that like their dad wasn't really their dad?
Oof. No, I've not heard that. That'd be something to find out. Yeah. Oof.
It happens all the time these days.
Huh. Yeah. That fits with E.D. Eastman. That's another book he should write. I found
Are
out
you
you're
my
not
dad?
my
Are you my
dad.
dad? Yeah. Well, we thankfully we've had about several decades of this with Maury Povich and Jerry Springer. So I don't know
Well,
if he
that's
needs to.
exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, that's right. Well, now that's interesting, isn't it? Because why is it that people enjoy watching that so much? Uh, I mean, is it this? So Scandal is always whatever interesting to begin with, but then there's like the suspense. Who's lying? Somebody's lying, or somebody's suspicion is warranted or unwarranted. Man, that's weird. That would be something we're so interested in.
Have I said this on the air before? I don't know if I have. I was at the National Youth Gathering in when was it? Um 2010, does that sound right? And because yeah, Matthew Harrison had just won election to the synodical presidency. So I think that was 2010. So we were down in New Orleans, and Jerry Kieschnick was there because they have to plan these things in advance. And every time he came to the stage, you had 20,000 people yelling, "Jerry, Jerry, Jerry."
Okay.
That's a pivotal moment for me.
Yeah, I can see how that's profoundly affected you for so long.
And I think the DCE that we went with, I think he was pretty unhappy unhappy about it. And I was like, sorry, dude.
We are high school boys, teenage boys.
That's right.
Okay, so Tamar as the righteous one, with Judah. Um,
And notably, she's a fake prostitute, right?
uh-huh,
She dresses the part. And then Rahab, the next woman mentioned, is a real prostitute.
yes, and she saves her whole family by her faithfulness, right? She preserves everybody by trusting in God.
Yep. And then Ruth, I do you think her story is scandalous in herself with the whole sleeping by the feet? There I could go either way with that.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say I've come around on this or come to what I think is some clarity about it. I think that moment um, is the test for both of them. And so what she's doing is she at her mother-in-law's um, prompting is exposing herself to potential abuse. And Boaz proves to be the righteous man like Joseph, not willing to disgrace her. Um, so the thing is that, like, what it's no scandal where where there was the great possibility of scandal, right?
Okay. Okay, good. So there doesn't have to be a scandal there because Ruth is a Moabite, which is scandalous in itself.
Yeah, that's good. So in fact, it's like an anti-scandal because it overturns the inherited scandal, right?
Oh, and that's what the whole book of Ruth is about. Because did you notice? So the book of Ruth ends with the genealogy
Hmm.
of David.
Hmm.
And so what it's doing is an illegitimate son is not allowed in the sanctuary for 10 generations. And so Tamar and Judah, that's the illegitimate son. Well, as it turns out, it's 10 generations between Tamar's son and David. So now you can have a real king allowed in the sanctuary.
Isn't there the similar restriction on the Moabites too? 10 generations for the Moabites. I think that's the case.
Oh, is it? Or are they never allowed in the sanctuary? I'd have to, yeah,
Yeah.
look that up real quick. That's a good question.
No Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. None of them may enter the assembly of the Lord forever. Okay, interesting. Contrast that
Oh,
then with like the
okay.
scandal, right?
Okay, so is it after 10 generations it's okay, or is it they're not allowed ever in?
They're not allowed ever.
Oh,
That's what it's saying. Yeah.
okay, so it's a really hyperbolic way. Like the 10th generation is mentioned because the Jews up to 10 generations were allowed back in, but now the Moabites never.
Yes. Yes. This is interesting too, because because they did not meet you with bread and water, right? So tie that in with the story of Ruth, where the question is about bread. Um, when you came out of Egypt, so you got that sojourning and exile in the land of the Moabites, and because they hired against you Balaam the son of Beor of Pethor, Mesopotamia, whose enticements after he tried to deal with the oracle was to sexual sin,
That's right. Yeah.
was to cult prostitution, right? And so it's like the book of Ruth overturns all of that.
That just reveals so much about um, pastors and prophets who are available to hire at will.
Yeah, man. Show no partiality. That's the job right there, right?
That's that's right. Okay, and then this is extra salty because Bathsheba doesn't even get her own name in verse 6. She's just known as the wife of Uriah.
Yeah.
Woof.
So this is not just a woman involved in a scandal, but also emphasizing the treachery of David, right?
Yep. And Jesus is called the son of David, which means it carries all of this weight with it. Like
Mhm.
obviously the good things, but also the fall.
Yeah. I was just remembering this. Yeah, in First Kings 15. Here's the synopsis of David's life, because God says that He's not going to take away the throne from Solomon, but from Rehoboam for David's sake. Nevertheless, for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem, setting up his son after him and establishing Jerusalem, because David did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and did not turn aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. It's like, um, this is the main thing you need to know about David, the matter of Uriah the Hittite. Right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's really killer is that it's in Chronicles when we get the listing of David's mighty men.
Mhm.
It's like Uriah is mentioned there.
Yeah, as well as um, uh, Ahithophel, who is Bathsheba's grandfather, I believe.
Hmm.
So it's
Okay.
two mighty men.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
See, simple question. Do you like the gospel?
Do I like the gospel? So I've been thinking about why I relish the Old Testament so much, and I think it's because I I realize that we don't love the gospel enough. We don't love it nearly enough. We who regard our sins lightly have not read the Old Testament enough to see how serious and devastating sin is in the lives of God's people, how
Yeah.
destructive it is. Um, and consequently we don't love the gospel enough.
That's fair. That's Walther, full sternness, full sweetness, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was thinking about this. I was thinking about how do you cultivate disgust where where it's appropriate and does not exist, and how we're not disgusted by things that we should find abominable. Like we've lost the visceral reaction to things, and that means also. I mean, it's like um, uh, you described maybe before we started recording that sense of relief or joy when something turns out very differently from how you were expecting it to. You're expecting a conversation to go poorly, and it didn't go that way at all. Like you have a visceral, natural reaction, sense of relief, right? And our reaction to the gospel, our instinctive, intuitive reaction to the gospel, should be that much more, that much more profound, right? Cultivating that reaction. That's what we need the Bible, you know.
How many resolutions have you written in your life that contained the phrase "godly disdain"?
Most of the resolutions I've written did.
That's which did get questioned, which
That's
is
right.
which is fine. But this is really telling, though. Like the first gospel in the New Testament starts off with really awful, sinful, scandalous things that we should be
Mhm.
repulsed by, and it's just showing you what kind of world Jesus was born into. Like his own family was like this, which I
Yeah.
find really comforting.
Yes. And then also add to that after you get David, you have two more sections of 14s which are describing this just complete and precipitous fall of the nation of God's people, right? You have these highlights, right? You've got Ahaz and Hezekiah and Josiah, and then the rest of them are awful. You know,
Right.
like is Manasseh's in there? Manasseh, 50 years of he's worse than Ahab, right? I mean, oh,
That's rough. But then you get Zerubbabel. He's he's all right. I mean, this is the reform. I I'm always trying to get people to remember Zerubbabel as the one who rebuilt the temple.
so that I think that um, the way that like you get these moments and you should remember them, but like how does that what does that leave you with at the end? It's very much like how I think it went for Nicodemus, and Jesus is like we need to be born again, and he's thinking about. I buy the argument that he's not thinking about literally entering into his mother's womb, but he's thinking about the nation of Israel. Like his people. How could we possibly how could there be a reform deep enough for us to actually like look at what we've tried? We had the best kings there ever were, and it's still only lasted for a moment, right?
That's great, but I like to think he wanted to crawl back up the birth canal because
Okay,
it's funnier.
that's fine. That's funnier. You're right.
But there's probably validity to it. Now, of course, there's one last woman mentioned, and I don't know if it's the most scandalous of them all, but it's Mary in verse 16.
Yeah, right. Mhm.
And well, just based on time, we're gonna get to talk about Christmas next time. But so because if you are engaged to your fiance and she gets pregnant and you know you didn't do it, and she told you it was from God, would you believe her?
So yes, because hopefully I would not be engaged to somebody I didn't trust. Like whose trustworthiness was verifiable. I mean,
Okay,
because this is the thing is like, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say take Jessica out of it.
Well, I can't.
Okay. Okay. Well, the answer, because the answer I was looking for is like, no, I'm not going to believe you. Are you kidding me? Like, like this has never happened before in the history. And yeah, sure, okay, yeah, totally believe you. Which I think that's a fine reaction because that's like 99.99999% of this. Which is why an angel has to show up to Joseph.
so I'm playing out in my mind though, like why is he torn about it, right? So I'm playing out in my mind that scene with the professor in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where he goes like, you got Edmund who's a liar and Lucy who's not a liar, and she's the one who's telling you there's a world beyond that wardrobe. Why are you going to believe Edmund now and not believe Lucy? And Edmund's been the liar the whole time. So that'd be the thing. It's like, but again, I mean, take Proverbs, right? A godly woman who can find. So Mary is trustworthy. You know, um, she's not been unfaithful, right? that's a remarkable thing.
Yeah, it's true. You're right. But Joseph is described as a righteous person, and even in his wanting to divorce her, he's described as being a righteous man. So he's totally justified in thinking, okay, what's going on here?
Fine, fair.
Again, it's not. It's like it's supposed to be scandalous, but it's totally redeemed. And I find a lot of comfort. I mean, you hear about families having really terrible Christmases. Well, the first one wasn't all peaches either.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, cool. Hey, I'm excited to talk about Christmas with you next time. It'll be Christmas in March.
Sounds good.
Oh my goodness, what great timing, because next week is March 25th. I can't.
Oh, look at that.
I can't wait to talk about March 25th with you.
Now, hang on a second, because I think we have a guest coming up next week. That's right. We were scheduled to talk about Matthew chapter 2 with Tim Ullman next week, so we might have to see if he'll talk about Christmas a little bit as well. We'll get the wise man in there, but
well, this is only 8 verses, so I think he can.
Yeah, that's right.
I think he can talk about Christmas and the wise men together as a unit. That'll be good.
Perfect. All right.
Oh,
I'm gonna stop.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. No, go. You go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you if anything was grinding your gears.
Oh,
you got time?
Sorry.
You got time for me?
Let's see here. It's grinding my gears. It's 40 degrees here today. We had a storm roll through yesterday. Our first kind of like, it wasn't even close to bothering us, but tornado, the sirens went off, right? This is what happens in March here in Arkansas. And we were comparing, reflecting on the difference between a snowstorm in which you get 20 inches of snow in March or a tornado in March.
Sure.
Which would you prefer? And my wife made this comparison, and this is what I think apt. She said, it's a 24-hour stomach bug versus a 2-week-long flu, respiratory illness. She says, I would choose the stomach bug. Anyways, that's interesting. Yeah,
that is interesting.
What's grinding your gears?
Well, okay, so I'm reading Thomas Aquinas right now. Peter Kreeft has a really great summary. It's called Summa of the Summa. And so he just pairs back Aquinas's work and the most important, and it's still 550 pages, and it's got his footnotes on it. And just reading through it, just like the logical steps, how to argue, the objections, it's really helping me think, which is great. So if you've never read Thomas Aquinas, I'd really suggest that, and it's going to take me a while. The other thing I'm reading right now, and I think I want to talk to Tim Ullman about it because he'll really love it, is Moneyball.
Mm-hmm.
And this book has been out for over 20 years now. But I've got a lot of thoughts, like, okay, what's the connection here that we can make between analyzing baseball as a numbers game to church? Where does it work and where doesn't it work? And because it doesn't always work just in baseball either, because if you go just straight analytics, it is a terribly boring game to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. That's Michael Lewis, right? Moneyball.
Yeah, that's his name, right?
Yeah,
it's Michael. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a fun topic just generally, because I was thinking about how measuring things is important when you have objectives, right? So the thing about the church is that on the one hand, we have outcomes that are completely outside of our control, right? Who will hear and believe? No idea. But the faithfulness to our responsibilities is very measurable and should be measured, so that if we're not doing the tasks well that we should be doing, we need to change something. right?
Yeah. That's good. Okay, I think we'll probably talk about that quite a bit next week, and we'll get Tim's take on the Oakland A's.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right. Now I'm hitting
See you
stop.
then. All right.